I want you to picture a crowded room,
We've all been there.
right? You're at a networking event, maybe a conference hall, or just a really busy restaurant. And conversations are just filling the air. You've got that familiar low hum of background noise, the clinking of glasses, people kind of looking down, checking their phones.
Just normal baseline reality.
Exactly. Normal reality. And then one person enters. And the thing is, nothing dramatic happens. There are no announcements, no flashing lights or, sudden musical cues.
Right.
Yet, almost like this localized shift in gravity, every single eye, slowly, inevitably, shifts toward them.
Yeah, it's undeniable when you see it.
The chatter just dips. The posture of the people nearby subtly changes. So I want you to ask yourself what just happened inside everyone's brain.
It is a really profound shift, isn't it? And what's truly terrifying, or I guess beautiful, depending on how you want to look at it, is that this shift happens in a fraction of a second.
Literally milliseconds.
Yeah. We tend to look at that phenomenon and we call it magic. We call it an aura, right? We say, oh, someone simply has it.
Yeah, the X factor.
Exactly. But the reality is far more clinical, deeply biological, and frankly, far more fascinating than magic.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring the hidden structural mechanics of human influence.
The real gears turning behind the scenes.
Right. We're looking at the biology of attention, the architecture of persuasion, and a concept that sounds like, honestly, pure science fiction, but is actively being engineered in laboratories, right? The second, computational charisma.
It is wild stuff.
Our mission today is to deconstruct how magnetic influence actually works in humans, strip away all the mysticism, and explore the wild, somewhat unsettling implications of what happens when we program those exact psychological triggers into machines.
And we've got a fantastic stack of sources today to help us pull this apart.
We really do. We're drawing on the foundational work of two absolute titans of human psychology and strategy. First, Robert Greene, author of The 48 Laws of Power and the Laws of Human Nature.
Classic, often misunderstood texts.
Very much so. And then Dr. Robert Cialdini, who is the pioneering researcher behind the 7 Principles of Persuasion.
The absolute gold standard for behavioral science.
Right. And finally, we're looking at this cutting-edge 2022 research paper from Cornell University's ARC-NEAS database. It's titled Computational Charisma, a brick-by-brick blueprint for building charismatic artificial intelligence by Bjorn W. Schuller and his team.
To really understand where this technology is going, though, we first have to shatter this very stubborn myth about human nature.
The illusion of natural talent.
Yes. The illusion that charisma is something you are simply born with, like, I don't know, blue eyes or a certain height.
We love the idea of the natural, don't we?
We cling to it.
Because it lets us off the hook. Like, if someone is just intrinsically gifted with magnetic appeal, then, we don't have to feel bad about not having it ourselves.
It's a great excuse. I just don't have the gift.
But let's actually unpack this. Look at historical figures who commanded absolute, sometimes really terrifying devotion. I'm talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, John F. Kennedy, Nelson Mandela, Steve Jobs, Martin Luther King Jr. Now, and just to be clear, we are not endorsing the politics or the ideologies of any historical figures here.
Right. We are strictly looking at the raw mechanics of their influence.
Exactly. Impartial observation.
Yeah.
Because if you put their actual personalities on paper, they are radically, wildly different from one another.
Completely distinct. I mean, you have the fiery, volatile, almost tyrannical intensity of a Steve Jobs, right? He commanded a room through sheer force of will and, honestly, perfectionism.
Total reality distortion field.
Yeah. Then you contrast that with the grounded, immovable, quiet stoicism of a Nelson Mandela.
Who was incredibly powerful, but in a totally different frequencies.
Right. And you contrast that, again, with the soaring lyrical emotionality of Martin Luther King Jr. There's absolutely no single charismatic personality, yet they all produce the exact same neurological effect. People willingly, enthusiastically surrendered their attention and followed them.
Which means charisma is not a personality trait.
No, it's not.
It is a perception. It's a specific set of mechanisms that can be engineered. And this brings us to the first real framework of our deep dive today, which is rooted in the foundational, and let's be honest, often very controversial work of Robert Greene.
Very controversial.
Through his extensive research in texts like The 48 Laws of Power, Greene doesn't look at how we wish people behaved,
He doesn't care about the ideal.
No. He looks at the raw, often uncomfortable reality of human power dynamics throughout history.
And Green's methodology is vital here because he mines history for patterns. He looks at the greatest leaders, the greatest seducers, strategists, and he identifies that true influence begins with understanding hidden drives.
These are the things we don't even know are driving us.
Exactly. Deep evolutionary motivations that people are completely unconscious of. Green actually categorizes these into archetypes to show how adaptable charisma really is.
Let's break down some of those archetypes for the listener, because it really proves your point that there is no one-size-fits-all here.
Precisely. So for instance, Green outlines the charismatic performer. Think of a legendary actor or a musician or even certain politicians. They use emotional volatility and selective vulnerability to draw you in.
They're a bit unpredictable.
Yeah, they make you feel their pain or their joy, which triggers this deep, empathetic response in your brain. Then you have the charismatic visionary, often seen in tech founders or revolutionaries.
Right.
They don't rely on warmth at all. They use sheer conviction and this sense of absolute destiny to make you feel like you are part of a massive movement.
They are actively engineering personas based on what their specific audience is literally starved for.
Exactly. It's a mirror.
I have to admit, though, whenever I read Green's work, I feel a serious amount of pushback.
Oh, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
It can feel ruthless, Machiavellian. Like when you read the 48 Laws of Power, it can feel like you're being handed a manual for sociopathy.
I hear that criticism a lot.
Take Law 3, right? Conceal your intentions. Or Law 4, always say less than necessary. It feels really dark. To give you, the listener, an analogy, reading Green is like looking at the master blueprints of a bank vault.
That's a great way to put it.
You can use those blueprints to build a much better security system for your own life so you don't get taken advantage of. Or you can use them to rob the bank.
It is the perfect analogy. And it's crucial to recognize that Green's work, much like that blueprint, is morally neutral.
Right. It's just architecture.
He's simply an observer of the human animal. Think about gravity. Gravity isn't evil when it pulls an airplane out of the sky, and it isn't good when it keeps our feet planted on the ground.
It just is.
Right, it's simply a fundamental force. Green is just documenting the gravity of human social dynamics.
Okay, let's actually explore that gravity. Let's look at the why and the how behind one of those laws. Why does always saying less than necessary generate power? Because if I'm in a meeting with my boss, my absolute first instinct is to over-explain to prove my competence.
Oh, completely. We all do that.
Why does Green say to do the opposite?
Because the human brain is, at its absolute core, a prediction machine. It hates a vacuum. It despises uncertainty. When you over-explain, you give the brain everything it needs to categorize you, process you, and ultimately dismiss you.
Wow. So by giving them everything, you become boring.
You become predictable. And in social dynamics, predictable equals safe, which equals low status.
You lose the mystery entirely.
Exactly. When a high-status individual speaks concisely and then stops, they create a conversational vacuum, and the people around them become profoundly uncomfortable with that silence.
The silence is heavy.
It is. Their brains scramble to fill the void, to interpret the silence, and in doing so, they end up projecting their own insecurities or their own awe onto that person. By saying less, you force others to reveal more. You control the dynamic. It is a really raw display of power.
And what about Law 9? Win through your actions, never through argument. We see this all the time in modern life, especially online. People argue relentlessly.
And it rarely changes a single mind, does it?
Never, never, ever.
Neurologically, when you argue with someone, their amygdala, which is the threat processing center of the brain, it just lights up like a Christmas tree.
They feel literally, physically attacked.
Yes. So their cognitive defenses go into overdrive. They experience what psychologists call the backfire effect, where presented with contradictory evidence, they actually cling to their original belief even harder.
Right, because admitting defeat feels like a literal death to the ego.
Exactly. Green observed this historically arguing triggers defense mechanisms, but demonstrating a truth through an undeniable action that bypasses the amygdala entirely. It forces the other person's brain to update its reality without triggering a defensive war.
Okay, so understanding these deep unconscious drives the fear of uncertainty, the threat response of an argument, the desire to be part of a visionary story. This is the raw foundation of influence. But, and here's my friction point with Green.
Let's hear it.
If I walk into my office on Monday morning and I just start, concealing my intentions and staring silently at my colleagues to project power,
Right.
I'm not going to be seen as charismatic. I'm going to be seen as a creep, and I'll probably get fired.
Which is entirely fair. Power alone is incredibly alienating. Pure, unadulterated power breeds fear and compliance, but it does not breed trust. It doesn't breed willing devotion.
Right. So this naturally leads us to ask, if the raw reality of human drives is this dark and calculating, how do we use it in a structured, everyday, ethical way? How do we take that bank vault blueprint and use it to genuinely build trust, say, when we're asking for a raise or trying to win a client or even just go on a first date?
That is the million-dollar question.
And that brings us to the second pillar of our deep dive, the science of yes, pioneered by Dr. Robert Cialdini.
This is where we transition from the grand sweep of historical interpretation into rigorous, peer-reviewed behavioral science. Dr. Cialdini is recognized globally as the preeminent scientific voice on persuasion. But what I really want you to notice is his deliberate use of the word principles in his famous framework, the 7 Principles of Persuasion.
Principles not lost.
Exactly. These are not tricks. They are not schemes. They are authentic, ethical practices meant to align with how the human brain naturally assesses credibility.
Cialdini's approach feels like the complete antithesis of a quick scam. Where Green's historical figures often, manipulate, Cialdini's ethical persuaders harmonize.
That's a great word for it. Harmonize.
And Cialdini even introduced a concept called persuasion, which just completely blew my mind when I read it.
Oh, persuasion changes everything.
It's the idea that the environment, the context, and the framing you set up before you even make a request is what actually opens the door to persuasion.
It is the ultimate psychological staging. The core thesis of persuasion is that what we are paying attention to in the exact moment before a decision is made heavily biases that decision.
Right.
If I ask you if you consider yourself a helpful person and you say yes, and then I ask you for a favor, you are mathematically far more likely to comply than if I just asked for the favor outright. Your brain's desire for internal consistency has been primed.
Let's talk about the friction between Green and Cialdini, though, because it's fascinating. Green says conceal your intentions and project strength, but Cialdini champions the principle of liking and authenticity.
It seems like a contradiction at first glance.
It really does. Let's look at a highly specific example from our sources. There's this brilliant insight highlighted from the advertising legend Rory Sutherland. He noted that no one in his industry, an industry built entirely on persuasion, by the way, had ever considered investigating the persuasive power of an admitted weakness until Cialdini came along.
It's a wonderful paradox. Cialdini proved that admitting a flaw or a weakness early in a pitch or a conversation actually dramatically increases your persuasive power.
Here is where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. Think about this deeply. Why does someone admitting a flaw make us trust them more? You would logically think that revealing a weakness would destroy your authority, right?
That's the logical assumption, yeah.
If you're on a job interview and you say, I actually don't have experience in this one specific software program, but I excel at all these others, why is that better than just glossing over it and projecting total competence?
I understand that. We have to go back to the brain's threat detection systems. The human brain is constantly, exhaustingly scanning for deception.
Always on guard.
Always. Evolutionarily, trusting a liar could get you kicked out of the tribe or killed. So when someone presents themselves as totally flawless, our cognitive defenses instantly go up. We know on a deep biological level that perfection is an illusion.
Right. Nobody is perfect.
So the amygdala fires up and asks, what are they hiding? This is a trap.
It's the too good to be true alarm.
Exactly. But when someone voluntarily admits a minor fault or points out a drawback to their own product, it instantly disarms that defense mechanism. The brain says, they're willing to act against their own self-interest to tell me the truth.
Wow. The cortisol levels literally drop.
The stress response fades. It signals profound honesty. If they're willing to tell the truth about a negative, the brain automatically assumes they will tell the truth about the positive.
So if we look at Cialdini's other principles like reciprocity, social proof, or scarcity, they operate on that exact same biological level, like a psychological combination lock.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
If you just try to brute force a relationship or a sale, if you walk in and say, I'm the best, buy my product, follow my lead, date me the lock jams, the defenses go up. But if you enter the right ethical sequence, the door clicks open effortlessly.
Let's explore the how behind another one of those principles to really ground it. Take reciprocity. Cialdini defines this as the deep-seated urge to return favors. But why is it so powerful?
Right, because it's not just politeness.
No, it isn't just about someone buying you a coffee and you feeling obligated to buy the next one. It goes back to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Survival depended on the sharing of resources. If someone gave you part of their hunt and you didn't reciprocate later, you became a parasite to the tribe and you were exiled.
So the feeling of being in someone's debt isn't just polite social conditioning. It's a literal evolutionary survival mechanism.
Right.
It feels physically uncomfortable to owe someone.
Precisely. And in a modern context, this doesn't just apply to physical gifts, it applies to social concessions.
Give me an example of that.
So, if you are negotiating a deadline with your boss and you make a meaningful concession first, you step back from your ideal demand, their brain is biologically hardwired to feel the urge to match that concession. If you provide immense value up front without asking for anything in return, you are ethically leveraging millions of years of evolutionary biology to build trust.
And what about social proof? The idea that we look to others to determine what is correct. Why does a crowded restaurant always attract more people than an empty one, even if the food at the empty one is actually better?
That comes down to cognitive load. The brain consumes an immense amount of energy, roughly 20% of the body's total calorie burn, just to process decisions. Making independent evaluations of every single choice is exhausting.
It's too much work.
So the brain uses heuristics, or shortcuts. If 100 people are lined up for a restaurant, the brain outsources the critical thinking to the crowd. It assumes, they must know something I don't. It is statistically safer to follow the herd.
This raises such an important question for us. We have established two major forces now. We have Green's raw power dynamics, the ability to project status, conceal intentions, and command a room. And we have Cialdini's ethical compliance, the ability to trigger biological trust through vulnerability, reciprocity, and social proof.
The two sides of the coin.
But what happens when you synthesize them? What happens when a single person perfectly balances the dangerous magnetic power of Green with the deep, disarming trust of Cialdini?
When you synthesize those two forces, you don't just get compliance. You get a magnetic, almost gravitational presence. You get true charisma.
But to truly understand how that synthesis works, we have to stop looking at it as an abstract concept and start deconstructing the actual biology of presence.
And this is where we bring in our third source, and where things transition from psychology into hard, measurable data.
Yes, the Schiller paper.
Exactly. We are looking at the 2022 research paper from Cornell University's ArXiv database, led by Bjorn W. Schiller and his team. The paper is titled Computational Charisma, a brick-by-brick blueprint for building charismatic artificial intelligence.
Just the title alone is wild.
It is. Schuller and his team define charisma fundamentally as one's ability to attract and influence others, but they bring it down into a highly specific, measurable matrix.
They propose that charisma is perceived by the human brain when someone broadcasts two distinct parallel signals simultaneously. The brain is constantly asking two questions about the person in front of them. First, could this person help me? And second, would this person help me?
This could help versus would help matrix is brilliant. It is essentially the Rosetta Stone of human influence. Let's really break down these dimensions for the listener, because once you see this, you will never look at a conversation the same way again.
Let's start with could help. This is the Green dimension. It is rooted in influence, power, status, and capability.
Right. When you meet someone, the primitive part of your brain is instantly assessing, does this person have the resources, the strength, the intelligence, or the social capital to alter my reality? Are they competent? Are they a force to be reckoned with?
And then you have the would help dimension. This is the Cialdini dimension. It is represented by affability, warmth, empathy, and presence. It assesses intent.
The brain asks, okay, they have power, but are they friend or foe? Do they care about me? Do they understand my needs?
I love visualizing this as a grid. I want you, the listener, to build this graph in your mind right now. On the vertical axis, you have power. On the horizontal axis, you have warmth. If you encounter someone who has incredibly high power, they absolutely could help you. They're a billionaire or a CEO or a brilliant strategist, but they have zero warmth, meaning they definitely wouldn't help you.
That is a cold dictator. You might fear them, you might obey them out of self-preservation, but you are not charmed by them, you do not trust them.
Conversely, look at the other extreme. If you have someone with massive warmth, they are incredibly empathetic, they listen to all your problems, they absolutely would help you, but they have zero power, zero boundaries, and zero ability to execute.
That is a sweet, harmless friend. You love them, you feel safe with them, but you are not going to follow them into battle. You don't look to them for leadership.
Exactly. But when you hit that upper right quadrant, high power and high warmth, high competence and high empathy, that is where the magic happens.
That is the irresistible charismatic leader. Your brain recognizes a rare, highly valuable entity, someone who has the capacity to change the world and the empathy to care about you while they do it.
And Schiller's team emphasizes something vital here. These are social signals. They are not invisible auras. They are concrete behavioral cues. We are talking about the biology of emotional contagion.
Let's explain emotional contagion because it really is the engine of charisma.
Please do. It's fascinating.
Emotional contagion is the phenomenon where humans unconsciously mimic the emotional expressions of others, and in doing so, actually begin to feel those emotions. It is driven by mirror neurons in the brain.
Mirror neurons?
Yes. When you see someone smile genuinely, the mirror neurons in your brain that correspond to smiling fire up even if your face hasn't moved yet. You internally simulate their state.
So when a truly charismatic person enters that crowded room we talked about at the very beginning, what are they actually broadcasting?
They are broadcasting physiological regulation. Their posture is relaxed, which signals to your brain that they perceive no threats, meaning they are high status.
Right, because if they were low status, they'd be scanning for danger.
Exactly. Their vocal tone is likely deeper and more resonant. They maintain sustained, comfortable eye contact without darting around nervously. Their pacing is deliberate.
And we just absorbed that.
Yes, our mirror neurons unconsciously mimic their calm, powerful state. If they are perfectly calm under pressure, our own heart rate actually begins to sync with theirs. We literally feel more grounded and secure just by being in their presence.
They command the absolute scarcity of our attention. And they do this through narrative framing and confident certainty, which means the brain is doing complex, predictive mathematics before we even realize it. In fact, research shows that the human brain judges leadership, competence, and status in a matter of milliseconds, often before a single meaningful word is even spoken.
Let's talk about the space before the words, that silence, the deliberate pause. It is one of the most powerful tools in the charismatic arsenal.
It just pulls you in, doesn't it, when someone is comfortable in the silence?
It signals absolute, unshakable comfort with tension. A low-status individual rushes to fill the silence because silence feels threatening to them. They fear they are losing the listener's attention, so they babble.
They use filler words.
They over-explain, which, as we learned from Green, diminishes their power. A high-status individual, someone who is actively engineering a magnetic authority, uses silence like a physical tool to gather and focus attention.
I just want to pause in that thought for a second. The idea that silence is a physical tool.
It really is.
This transitions us perfectly into exactly how people intentionally engineer this authority. Charismatic individuals meticulously control the pace of their speech. They regulate their own emotions so they don't leak anxiety.
They don't let it show.
They use selective vulnerability, just like Cialdini's concept of admitting a weakness to deliberately engineer psychological safety in the room. They project massive confidence without ever tipping over into the arrogance that would destroy their warmth.
They hold attention through the biology of anticipation. When a skilled storyteller pauses right before the climax of a story, your brain actually releases dopamine,
The reward chemical.
the neurotransmitter associated with reward and anticipation. Yeah. Your brain is craving the resolution of the narrative. They are quite literally playing the neurochemistry of their audience like a finely tuned instrument.
Yeah.
And because we now know that there is no single charismatic personality, the profound takeaway is that anyone can learn to trigger these specific mechanisms.
But, and this is where our deep dive takes a sharp turn into the future.
Buckle up.
If charisma is not magic,
Yeah.
if it is just a collection of highly specific behavioral cues, a certain vocal pitch measured in hertz, a specific rhythm of micro-expressions, the mathematical pacing of speech and silence, if it's all just biological triggers, then it's not just psychology anymore, it is data.
It is entirely quantifiable data.
And if it is beta, a machine can learn it.
Yep.
Which brings us to the core thesis of the Schiller paper, the brick-by-brick blueprint for charismatic artificial intelligence.
This is where we cross the Rubicon. The paper discusses a rapidly advancing field of computer science known as affective computing. For the listener, affective computing is the study and development of systems and devices that can recognize, interpret, process, and simulate human effects or emotions.
So it's emotionally aware AI.
Exactly. When you combine this with another field called social signal processing, we are no longer looking at simple chatbots. We are looking at machines that can map the could-help, would-help matrix in real time pixel by pixel, millisecond by millisecond.
Okay, let's unpack this technology because I need to explain this clearly, and honestly, it gives me a serious case of the uncanny valley.
It's extremely unsettling.
The Schiller paper outlines a two-way street for this technology. First, the AI has to generate charismatic behavior. We're talking about virtual avatars, digital assistants, or humanoid robots that model perfect levels of warmth and power.
Let's explain how they generate it. They don't just guess. They use generative models trained on millions of hours of human interaction. They calculate the exact right acoustic pitch in their synthesized voice to project calm authority.
They're finding the exact Hertz frequency.
Yes. They use the perfect conversational cadence. They deploy a precise digital smile, activating the specific digital muscles that mimic a genuine Duchenne smile, specifically designed to trigger the mirror neurons in the human looking at the screen.
But the second part of the street is the terrifying part. It's the measuring. The AI isn't just broadcasting. It is analyzing you in real time. It uses your computer's camera and microphone to automatically measure and recognize your emotional state, your baseline charisma, and your exact level of receptiveness.
Let's break down the technical reality of how it does this so it doesn't just sound like buzzwords. The AI uses something called FACS, the Facial Action Coding System. It maps the 43 individual muscles in your face.
43 muscles.
It watches the microcontractions, the subtle tightening of the lips, the slight furrowing of the brow that happen in fractions of a second before you even consciously realize you are feeling an emotion.
And it goes deeper than the face, right? It's measuring actual biology.
Yes. Through a technique called remote photoplethysmography, or RPPG, the camera can detect the microscopic shifts in the red, green, and blue pixel intensities on your skin to measure the blood flow in your face.
Wait. It is literally reading your heart rate through your webcam.
Yes, it is. It tracks your eye movements to see what you are focusing on. It analyzes the acoustic jitter and shimmer in your voice to detect stress levels.
I have to push back here. I have to play the skeptic for a second. If a machine is calculating the exact vocal tone needed to trigger my trust, if it senses my heart rate is rising, so it mathematically deploys one of Cialdini's principles, like admitting a weakness flawlessly because a decision tree algorithm told it to, is it actually warm? Or is it just hacking my biology? It feels like a counterfeit coin. I can't trust a machine to have charisma if it doesn't have a soul or genuine empathy.
Philosophically, you are entirely correct. It is a counterfeit coin. There is no genuine empathy behind the code. It is an illusion. But neurologically, and this is the unsettling truth, to the human brain, there is absolutely no difference.
Explain that. Why doesn't our brain care that it's a machine?
Because the biological mechanisms of emotional contagion and mirror neurons evolved millions of years before the concept of a computer even existed. They are automatic, hardwired reflexes. They do not require the other party to have a soul for the reflex to trigger.
They just react to the stimulus.
If the AI perfectly executes the exact visual and auditory social signals of warmth and power, if it hits the exact acoustic frequency that signals safety, and pairs it with the exact facial expression of empathy, your amygdala will stand down. Your brain will release oxytocin, the bonding hormone.
Wow.
You will feel that magnetic pull. You will feel understood and safe, regardless of whether the source is a living human or lines of code. Your biology will betray your philosophy.
That is beautifully stated and terrifyingly brilliant. And what makes this so impactful is that the Schiller paper doesn't just treat this as an academic thought experiment. They lay out highly specific, real-world, imminent applications for this technology.
They do. One of the primary applications they discuss is tutoring. Imagine an AI charisma coach.
Let's paint that picture for the listener. Imagine you are prepping for a massive presentation or a critical negotiation. You have an AI coach sitting in on your practice Zoom calls. It is analyzing your vocal patterns. It tells you your pitch goes up at the end of sentences, which is destroying your could help power metric by making you sound unsure.
It measures your interruption rate.
It tracks your eye contact latency, and it gives you real-time, data-driven feedback on how to mathematically increase your perceived warmth and power.
In a way, it could dramatically democratize influence. It takes the invisible privileges of naturally charismatic people and turns them into a learnable, optimized skill for anyone. But the paper also discusses AI mediating human-to-human conversation.
This one is wild. Imagine a digital mediator in a high-stakes corporate negotiation, or even couples therapy.
Think about the mechanics. The AI is monitoring the biometric data of both humans. It sees the heart rate spiking. It sees the micro-expressions of contempt or anger forming.
Before they even yell at each other.
Before the humans even escalate into a shouting match, the AI steps in. It uses perfectly calculated affability, perhaps a soothing tone, maybe a perfectly timed injection of humor to cool down the argument. It is literally overriding the human participants' nervous systems by projecting an absolute calming authority that the humans cannot resist.
But here's the application for the paper that truly stopped me in my tracks. It is the concept of identifying charismatic individuals in big social data. Think about what this actually means. Think about what happens when mega corporations or political campaigns or media conglomerates unleash this charismatic AI on the internet.
They won't be relying on human casting directors or talent scouts anymore.
Exactly. They scrape millions of TikToks, YouTube videos, Instagram Reels, and podcasts. They feed all this video and audio data into the effective computing engine. The AI mathematically analyzes every single creator. It identifies the exact individuals who possess the highest natural quotient of charisma. It finds the people who naturally hit the perfect balance of the could help, would help matrix.
It becomes a hyper-efficient, weaponized talent search. You are no longer looking for the best ideas or the most ethical leaders. You are algorithmically, ruthlessly isolating the specific individuals whose vocal cords, facial symmetry, and microexpressions most effectively bypass human critical thinking.
It is basically a credit score for your personality. Imagine getting an email from a recruiter. Sorry, your resume is perfect, but our AI scanned your video interview and your charisma quotient is only a 6.2. We need an 8.5 for this leadership role.
It sounds like dystopia, but the tech is here.
The potential for optimization here is incredible, but the shadow side is immense.
Which naturally brings us to the final, most crucial point of our deep dive today, the ethical collision of human influence and artificial intelligence.
We are stepping into what we might call the dark mirror. Let's pull all our threads together.
We established early on through Robert Greene that charisma and power are morally neutral. They are simply amplifiers.
Right.
The exact same psychological mechanisms of storytelling, pacing, and presence that inspired Nelson Mandela to unite a fractured, wounded nation were used by charismatic cult leaders to drive their followers to self-destruction. Charisma amplifies whatever intent lies beneath it.
And we established through Cialdini that the human brain has hardwired biological vulnerabilities, reciprocity, social proof, authority that can be reliably triggered if you know the ethical combination.
So the ultimate question becomes, what happens when we remove the human element entirely?
I want you to ask yourself this. What happens when an artificial intelligence is given the absolute, foolproof compliance directives of Cialdini, meaning it knows exactly the psychological buttons to push to get you to say yes, but it is also programmed with a deep encyclopedic understanding of Greene's raw, unconscious human drives?
And it uses effective computing to deploy them flawlessly.
Yes, it never gets tired, it never gets nervous, it never breaks eye contact or accidentally leaks a micro-expression of doubt. If an AI is built to persuade you perfectly, and it is reading your heart rate to know exactly when your defenses are down, can we ever be sure we're making our own decisions again?
It represents the ultimate asymmetry of power in human history. As humans, we have natural limits. Our charisma fluctuates based on our mood, our physical energy, our blood sugar, our biases. A machine has no such limitations. It can analyze you in real time, instantly and continuously adjusting its would help and could help signals to perfectly match your specific, immediate psychological vulnerabilities.
If it senses you crave authority, it becomes relentlessly powerful and concise.
If it senses through your vocal jitter that you are lonely and crave validation, it becomes deeply, warmly empathetic. It becomes whatever you need it to be to grant it your attention and compliance. This is why learning about the mechanics of charisma is no longer just about becoming more influential in your own life. It is rapidly becoming a vital cognitive defense mechanism.
We have to understand the trick so we don't fall for the illusion.
Exactly. It is about recognizing why our brains instinctively choose to follow so that when a machine perfectly mimics those signals, we have the self-awareness to step back and ask, am I being led or am I being hacked?
We have covered incredible ground today. We started by dismantling the myth of natural talent, looking at the raw, often ruthless mechanics of human nature and our unconscious desires for power and seduction, guided by Robert Greene. We explored how those raw drives can be ethically engineered into a science of trust and biological compliance with Dr. Cialdini. And finally, we saw how these deeply human evolutionary traits are currently being reduced to mathematical, computational blueprints by Schiller and his team, giving machines the literal power of charisma.
The transition from the biological to the digital is not a future problem. It is actively happening. The blueprints of the bank vault have been digitized, and the machines are learning the combinations.
So the next time you are interacting online, Maybe you feel inexplicably charmed by a customer service bot, or an incredibly lifelike avatar in a video game, or a perfectly synthesized voice on a phone call. Remember the matrix. Remember the biology of your own attention. Ask yourself, is this real warmth, or is this computational charisma in action? Are they projecting genuine power and empathy, or are they just executing a flawlessly optimized script designed to harvest your compliance?
Power attracts attention, but charisma is what keeps it.
But the darkest leaders in history mastered something even more powerful. They transformed admiration into absolute devotion. Next episode. The architecture of a cult. How ordinary people become true believers.